The news of Caleb Thorne's return surfaced at a charity gala. It started as a murmur among the clinking of champagne flutes, a ripple of speculation that the family's most notorious scion was finally stateside. Some theorized he was being groomed to take over the Thorne empire, while others scoffed, suggesting he'd simply grown bored of European diversions. Amidst the swirling gossip, a newcomer to their circle turned to Julian Vance. He recalled that Mr. Vance and the younger Thorne were old university classmates. The lively chatter around them seemed to dim. All eyes, veiled but sharp, fell upon Julian. His grip on his glass tightened almost imperceptibly. He confirmed with a cool, clipped tone that they had indeed been in the same program. The man, oblivious to the sudden tension, continued enthusiastically, mentioning he was an alumnus as well and remembered seeing the two of them together constantly, remarking on how close they had seemed. A thick silence fell over the group. The unspoken history between the Vance and Thorne names hung in the air, a well-known saga of rivalry. An older guest gently steered the conversation away, saving the newcomer from his faux pas by noting that college was a long time ago and that Mr. Vance and Mr. Thorne were hardly on the same path now. Julian offered a thin, polite smile to the flustered man, affirming that his memory wasn't wrong. He acknowledged that they were once close. It was also a fact, he added, that their paths had diverged, placing them on opposite sides of a bitter corporate war. What no one knew was that through the close-knit friendship in school and the brutal skirmishes in the business world, they had been in love. A secret 3-year affair that had been as intense as it was clandestine. Julian had been the one to end it. Caleb had left for Europe without a word, and for 5 years there had been nothing. Julian wondered what could possibly bring him back now. The drive home was smooth until the car came to an abrupt halt just shy of his brownstone's gate. The chauffeur muttered an apology, disturbed from the quiet rhythm of the late-night streets. Julian, who had been resting his eyes, opened them with a frown, the last glass of scotch churning unpleasantly in his stomach. The driver's hesitant voice pulled him from his thoughts. He explained that someone was blocking the driveway and asked if he should call security. Julian leaned forward, his gaze cutting through the glare of the headlights. And there he was, the man he had been trying not to think about all evening, casually perched on a large suitcase as if he'd been waiting for hours. Caleb Thorne, dressed in a black leather jacket over a simple white t-shirt, his expression unreadable in the harsh light. The sight felt strangely familiar, like a half-remembered dream. The suitcase was the same one Caleb had used 5 years ago to pack up every trace of his existence from Julian's life. Julian remembered the grating sound of its wheels on the stone path as Caleb walked away without a single backward glance. After a moment of stillness, Julian gave the order to drive straight through. The chauffeur, startled, glanced in the rearview mirror, but seeing Julian's impassive face, he complied. The engine rumbled, and the car crept forward until the bumper was inches from Caleb's legs. Caleb didn't move. As the car's brilliant beams lowered, his face came into focus. He was smiling, a familiar, reckless smile that held a sharp, knowing edge. Julian knew he wouldn't yield. Not wanting to involve the driver further, he opened the door himself, dismissing the man for the night. As the last syllable of his instruction faded, his eyes met Caleb's. Caleb watched him for a long moment before slowly rising to his feet. He had heard Julian was getting married. Julian's response was ice. He questioned if Caleb had truly risked deep vein thrombosis on a 20-hour flight just to say that in person. Caleb's smile widened. He asked if that was concern in Julian's voice. Julian loosened his tie, his expression flat, reminding Caleb that they were not on such terms anymore. He walked past him toward the door, the sound of the suitcase wheels grinding on the pavement following close behind. At his doorstep, Julian turned, looking down at Caleb from the top of the stairs. He informed Caleb that they weren't on terms that allowed him inside either. Then he closed the door. After a brief, tasteless meal prepared by his housekeeper and a long shower intended to empty his mind, Julian walked out of the bathroom to find Caleb leaning against the far wall. His brain took a few seconds to process the impossibility. The security code had not been changed in years, an act of either laziness or sentimentality he'd never examined too closely. The sequence of numbers was muscle memory now, its original meaning, the anniversary of the day Caleb had first marked him, long buried. Caleb remarked on it, a low drawl that was both a question and a challenge. Julian stated coolly that he would have it changed immediately and asked if there was anything else. Caleb said nothing, simply taking a step forward. Julian's posture stiffened. He asked icily if Caleb's trespassing was a practical demonstration of security flaws or merely a symptom of poor manners. Caleb stopped before him, his playful demeanor gone. He told Julian there was no one else around. He could drop the hostility. Julian countered, questioning the appropriateness of showing up in an ex-boyfriend's home in the middle of the night. Caleb conceded the point, his light eyes fixed on Julian, before a slow, crooked smile returned. He claimed he'd left something behind, something Julian had to return. That was laughable. When Caleb left, he had been meticulous in his destruction of their shared life. Clothes they'd bought together were cut in half, matching mugs smashed, appliances dismantled. He had taken everything. For him to claim now that something remained was absurd. Julian told him there was nothing of his left. Caleb leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper, his breath warm against Julian's ear as he insisted that Julian still owed him one last time. A cold shock ran down Julian's spine. He stared, incredulous, accusing Caleb of being insane. Caleb scoffed, asking who was truly the one talking nonsense. He reminded Julian of his own vow, made the night he'd broken off their engagement, that he would never marry. And now, Caleb mused, it seemed loneliness had finally gotten the better of him. It was clear Caleb had come straight from the airport. He looked exhausted, his breathing slightly heavy. Caleb derisively quoted the criteria for Julian's prospective spouse, which had been circulating through their social circles. Comparable assets, no fertility issues. He asked if that was all Julian required in a partner now. It was true. The list, given to a professional matchmaker, was brutally pragmatic, a necessity born from his grandfather's failing health. Julian didn't want the old man to die with his wish for a stable legacy unfulfilled. Caleb, seemingly provoked by Julian's silence, grew more aggressive. He asked why Julian hadn't come to him if he was so desperate, taunting him that no one knew his body better. Julian cut him off sharply, reminding him that they were over and his decisions were no longer any of Caleb's concern. But Caleb pressed on, his hands suddenly clamping onto Julian's lower back, pulling him close. Before Julian could react, Caleb's fingers traced a path up his spine, stopping at a precise point between his shoulder blades. He asked if anyone else had ever touched him there. It was the location of a small mole, a place of exquisite sensitivity that Caleb had made his own during their most intimate moments. The air suddenly thickened with the ghost of a scent, black iris, Caleb's scent. It had been so long. A deep, involuntary tremor went through Julian's body, a wave of memory and longing so powerful his will almost broke. He took a shaky breath, gathered his strength, and pushed Caleb away. He offered an apology for breaking his word about marriage, hoping it would be enough. When it wasn't, he swept a potted plant from a nearby table. It crashed to the floor, the sound echoing through the quiet house. The butler, alerted by the noise, appeared moments later. Seeing Caleb, he immediately turned to summon more staff. The entire household had witnessed the violent end of their relationship 5 years ago. Footsteps thundered up the stairs. Caleb took a step back, a mocking glint in his eyes. He asked if Julian truly believed he had traveled for so long just to get an apology. Julian, unsettled, looked away and repeated his apology, urging Caleb to go home and rest. The next day, Julian understood Caleb's parting words. The foreign conglomerate he had been working with for 5 years, the partnership that had saved the Vance Corporation from ruin, had a new face at the helm. It was Caleb Thorne. He walked into the boardroom, ignoring the stunned gasps, pulled out the chair beside Julian, and sat down with a bright, defiant smile. After a brief, self-assured introduction, Caleb took control of the meeting, his demeanor all business. He was sharp, focused, a commanding presence that was both familiar and terrifyingly new. All through the presentation, Julian felt as if he were in a fog. How could it be him? This stable, crucial partnership had been his lifeline. He tried to recall any missed signs over the years, the refusal to ever hold video conferences, the punctual but impersonal birthday emails, a strange message once during a call that had simply read, "It's snowing in your city." A sudden warmth on his thigh jolted him back to the present. Caleb's hand was resting there, his thumb stroking slowly. Julian's entire body went rigid. Caleb, his eyes fixed on the presentation screen, whispered that Julian's acting had gotten worse. After the meeting, Caleb cornered him outside his office. Wary of the curious staff, Julian let him in. Caleb surveyed the room, his gaze landing on a small metal counter on the desk. He remarked on how nostalgic it was to see the fearful looks on his employees' faces, just like the old days when everyone thought they were about to kill each other. He picked up the counter, its display reading 997. He asked what it meant. Julian stiffly told him it was nothing. Caleb clicked it twice, resetting it to 0. He wondered aloud if it was the number of times Julian had thought of him. Julian's heart skipped a beat. He denied it, changing the subject to ask how Caleb had taken over the firm. Caleb finally met his eyes, his expression serious. He reminded Julian that while he may have initiated the breakup, Caleb had never once agreed to it. A tense silence filled the soundproof office. Finally, Julian asked what he wanted. Caleb's answer was immediate. He forbade the marriage. Julian's was just as swift. He couldn't do that. Caleb's gaze intensified. He forbade him from marrying anyone else. Julian noticed then how formally Caleb was dressed, in a bespoke suit, looking every bit the man who had once knelt before him surrounded by a room full of flowers. Julian gave a humorless laugh, asking if Caleb really wanted to be rejected a second time. He left the office feeling like an automaton and drove to the hospital. The doctor's prognosis for his grandfather was grim. It was a matter of preserving his remaining quality of life, not pursuing risky treatments. Julian understood. His grandfather, frail in his hospital gown, asked about his brothers, then about him. Julian assured him that the marriage arrangements were proceeding. The old man sighed, telling Julian that while he was the most reliable of his 3 Omega grandsons, he was also the one he worried about most. He wanted to meet the man Julian chose before he was gone. The grandfather's recently announced will had sent a shockwave through the family. The first of the 3 brothers to produce an heir would inherit the entire Vance fortune. His 2 younger brothers had already taken drastic measures. Julian's progress, by comparison, was the slowest. Leaving the hospital, Julian discovered his driver was stranded, his car having been towed. As he stood wondering what to do, A silver sports car pulled up. Caleb leaned out, telling him to get in. Julian refused and began to walk away, but Caleb followed, finally cutting him off at the hospital exit. He threatened to go up and have a chat with Julian's grandfather. The threat hit its mark. Julian got into the car, Caleb to stay away from his family. As they drove, the city lights blurring past the window, Caleb asked if he had washed away his mark. The question hung in the air. Julian, a poor liar, eventually mumbled that it was gone. After a few seconds of silence, Caleb gave a short, bitter laugh, remarking that of course it was gone. He couldn't carry another Alpha's child while still bearing his mark. He asked if the procedure had been painful. The topic was suffocating. Julian reached for the window controls, but they were locked. He tugged at his tie. Caleb warned him not to start something he couldn't finish. Julian retorted that what was once flirtation was now just harassment. Caleb ignored him, criticizing his decision to let a will dictate his life, calling him a fool. He tossed a file onto Julian's lap. Inside was a copy of a different will, also signed by his grandfather. This one divided the estate equally among the three brothers, with no mention of an heir. Caleb's voice softened as he realized the truth. Julian already knew. Julian explained calmly that it wasn't about coercion. It was about giving his grandfather the peace of mind he craved, a show of stability. The marriage to a suitable partner was also good for business. It was a win-win. The knuckles on Caleb's hands turned white as he gripped the steering wheel. He slammed on the brakes, pulling the car over sharply. He unbuckled his belt and lunged across the console, grabbing Julian's shoulders. His voice was raw as he demanded to know if Julian truly intended to have a child with someone else. The enclosed space filled with the overwhelming scent of black iris. Julian couldn't look at him, afraid his eyes would betray the truth, that his body and his heart still reacted to Caleb as if no time had passed at all. Caleb's grip tightened, his voice thick with pain. He confessed that while Julian could erase his mark, he himself had spent every heat cycle for the past 5 years clinging to the last remnants of Julian's scent on the few items he'd taken from the house. A razor, a shirt. But that scent had faded completely 2 years ago. He told Julian how much he had missed him, how terrible his life had been without him. Julian, his own voice wooden, told him he should find a new partner. The words struck Caleb like a physical blow. He asked, his voice trembling, if Julian was really telling him to be with someone else. Julian, trying to sound like a rational friend, advised him that it was too hard to suffer through the instability alone, that his family would want him to be happy. Caleb's voice was barely a whisper as he replied that they had tried, setting him up with Omega after Omega. But it was no use. He became frantic, his breath hot against Julian's neck as he moved closer to the scarred glands there. He begged Julian, telling him he only wanted him. Julian remained still, looking straight ahead. The once proud, confident Caleb Thorne was now pleading for his scent. It was a pitiable, heart-wrenching sight, but it was impossible. He told Caleb that the person, the scent he remembered, was gone, couldn't soothe him anymore. He turned his head just enough, and Caleb's expression went blank. He had smelled it, the sharp, unfamiliar scent of bitter orange. An Omega's scent changes when they bond with an Alpha, merging to create something new. His original scent was lime, but it had been dominated by Caleb's black iris for years. This new scent was alien to him. Julian told him it was time to move on. A knock on the window interrupted them. It was Julian's youngest brother, Leo, peering in. Julian had sent him his location just moments before. As he got out of the car, Caleb's voice followed him, a broken question. Why could it be anyone but him? Later, in his brother's car, Julian administered a dose of suppressants. The heat in his body slowly subsided. They drove not home, but to the cemetery on the hill where their parents were buried. Julian stood before their graves alone, then walked to a different plot, marked only by a beautiful, simple bluestone beneath a cypress tree. He left a lit cigarette on the stone. He hadn't told Caleb the whole truth. He had never washed away the mark. His body still recognized only Caleb's scent, rendering all other treatments, all other alphas, useless. And there was another reason an Omega's scent could change so drastically. He looked at the small, unassuming mound of earth behind the stone. Buried there was the secret he had carried for 5 years. The reason he, too, wondered why it couldn't be Caleb, the one rebellion in his otherwise carefully controlled life. The crisis that had torn them apart had been swift and brutal. His parents' death in a tsunami, his brother's difficult Omega presentation, and the subsequent attacks on the vulnerable Vance Corporation. He and his grandfather had been fighting on all fronts. Caleb had tried to help in secret, but his family had intervened, cornering Julian and making it clear they would never approve. The breaking point had come when a crucial negotiation coincided with Caleb's heat. Julian couldn't be there. Caleb, wanting only to hold him, to give him a moment's rest from the endless work, had let him oversleep. Julian missed the meeting. The contract went to the Thorn Corporation. Caleb was devastated, full of apologies, but Julian saw the chasm between them then. Caleb loved him, but only him. Julian had a family, a legacy to protect. He couldn't afford that singular devotion. Then came the discovery. He was pregnant. In the midst of the chaos, a life had begun. He knew Caleb would have been ecstatic, blind to the impossible reality of their situation. So Julian made a choice. He went to the clinic alone and returned to the office that afternoon as if nothing had happened. A few weeks later, surrounded by a room of flowers, Caleb proposed. And Julian, his heart a dead weight in his chest, had told him they were through. The matchmaker sent a new file. Julian's intimidating reputation meant few suitable alphas responded. But one name stood out: Ethan, the young man from the gala. A beta. They met for dinner. Ethan was sweet, nervous, and clearly infatuated. He admitted he'd wanted to talk to Julian at the party. Julian's heart sank. This was not the transactional partner he needed. He explained gently that a marriage of convenience was about alliance, not affection, and he couldn't in good conscience string him along. Ethan asked if there was someone else. Faced with such sincerity, Julian couldn't lie. He admitted there was. Confused, Ethan asked why they couldn't be together. Julian replied simply, because his last name was Thorn. The partnership meetings with Caleb continued. Julian maintained a professional, icy demeanor. Caleb, however, was relentless. He showed up everywhere. He began subtly harassing Ethan, making business difficult for his family. Leo came to Julian, gossiping about the rumors, urging him to just sleep with Caleb again and get it over with so they could secure the inheritance. Julian considered telling his brothers the truth about the will, but a call from the hospital shattered his plans. His grandfather was fading fast. His doctor gave him the diagnosis: disbonded Omega syndrome. His own body, starved of his alpha's proximity, was attacking itself. The cure was simple: reunite with Caleb or undergo a painful surgery to permanently remove the mark. Julian scheduled the surgery for 3 days later. At an investor's dinner, he saw Caleb again, holding court as the Thorn heir. He also saw Ethan, who looked at him with a pained expression and quickly walked away. Later, another of the alphas from the matchmaker's list, a degenerate with a reputation for violence, cornered him. As Julian made his escape to the restroom, the nausea and pain became unbearable. He was fumbling with a bottle of painkillers when the door opened again. It was Caleb. He saw the pills and his face darkened. He blocked the door, demanding to know what was wrong. He backed Julian into a corner, his hands roaming over him, asking where it hurt. The touch, the proximity, the scent of black iris shattered Julian's defenses. A choked sob escaped him. Caleb pulled him into an embrace, and Julian felt all his strength drain away. In that moment of weakness, he found himself clinging to Caleb, his body betraying years of resolve. He awoke in his bed, feeling clear-headed for the first time in weeks. Caleb was sitting in a chair by the window, a file in his hands. The medical records from 5 years ago. He knew all of it. The ensuing conversation was quiet, filled with a sorrow that went beyond anger. Caleb apologized, not for the previous night, but for his youthful blindness, for not understanding the impossible weight Julian had been carrying. He confessed that he had gone to Julian's grandfather, told him everything, and had, to his shock, received the old man's blessing. The call came 3 days later while Caleb was still there. The grandfather was gone. Julian moved through the funeral arrangements with a numb, steely efficiency. Caleb remained a silent, solid presence at his side. As the last of the mourners departed, Julian stood before the new grave, feeling utterly empty. Caleb told him he had something to confess. He described his meeting with the old man, how he had laid bare their entire history and his intention to win Julian back. He said Julian's grandfather had looked at him for a long time and then told him he had passed the test. Something broke inside Julian. Tears he hadn't allowed himself to shed fell freely, soaking into the lapel of Caleb's dark suit. When the storm of grief subsided, he pulled back. He started to ask Caleb if he wanted to see the place where he had buried. He trailed off, unsure what to call the life that never was. Caleb told him he'd already seen it. He recognized the blue stone from the garden. He said it was a beautiful choice. He admitted that 5 years ago he would have been angry, but he wasn't anymore. As they walked down the stone steps of the cemetery, Leo called. The Thorn Corporation, taking advantage of the funeral, had just poached one of their biggest clients. Caleb stopped. He turned to Julian and held out his hand. After a moment's hesitation, Julian descended the last 2 steps and placed his hand in Caleb's. Caleb's grip was firm. His instruction was simple. Get it back.